Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
It's 1 a.m., and the streets in Shanghai are relatively empty. Thomas Wu, who is a father and a husband, is out riding his bicycle alone under the dim street lights. The night wind envelops him, just like the stress he can't shake off.
He's working in state finance sector, which is experiencing a salary cap. And, his pay has just been cut by 20% at work. He's facing this uncertain future, doesn't know when or how long he can hold his job for.
Wu got into an argument with his wife after returning home late from work. She was frustrated teaching their 6-year-old math, something Wu wasn't sure really mattered anymore.
He's wondering, what is the point of pushing our kids so hard when jobs have become meaningless and efforts are no longer tied to your pay, your salary?
Lulu Chen is Bloomberg's editor on Asia investing. Her team talked to Wu, who didn't want us to record his voice, but was willing to share his frustrations. He told Bloomberg that the career turn he's now facing has upended the life he had planned for himself and his family.
As a manager of a big state-owned firm, he enjoyed a good lifestyle. His kids are in international school, which is the new hallmark for upper-middle-class life in China. He also had the luxury car, and now all of that is being taken away.
What's happening to Wu is part of a major policy shift underway in China, where President Xi Jinping is actively reshaping the world's second-largest economy.
The industries that are experiencing the most drastic changes include finance, Chinese internet, and real estate. And these were all important growth drivers and job creators in the past, and now they're all cast adrift.
That policy shift, along with the job losses and pay cuts it brings, is fueling an existential crisis among some of the best and the brightest workers in China.
They no longer see the merit of working long hours, taking big risks. There's very little that they can do, which is why people are referring it to the garbage time in history.
Welcome to the Big Take Asia from Bloomberg News. I'm Oanh Ha. Every week, we take you inside some of the world's biggest and most powerful economies and the markets, tycoons, and businesses that drive this ever-shifting region. Today on the show, how one of China's biggest policy shifts is leaving a generation of professionals feeling adrift. And what happens to a country when many of its brightest and most ambitious citizens have their dreams crushed. The sectors of the Chinese economy that the government now wants to rein in employ a huge number of people in China.
There's 200 million people who work in white-collar jobs, and that's almost the population of Brazil. If you broke it down by sector, finance alone had 8 million people, property at its peak. If you include the supply chain and construction workers, that provided jobs to 100 million people.
Up until recently, these industries flourished with a strong labor force and robust foreign investments. And Lulu says they were part of an era where being rich was glorious and entrepreneurs were celebrated.
It was an era where people like Jack Ma, for sure, was highly respected. He would go to conferences and young people would chase him across the venue, hoping to get a word of wisdom and learn about how he achieved success in life. Now that era is gone. It's no longer glorious to be rich.
But now these industries have fallen out of favor in China, and President Xi Jinping has said he wants to move the country towards what he calls high-quality growth.
高质量发展，高质量共建一带一路，我们正以高质量发展。
Bloomberg went through Xi's speeches last year and found the phrase pop up at least 128 times, nearly double the mentions in 2022.
That is the new mantra right now, high-quality growth, not high speed. So these industries as finance, consumer tech, and property are out of favor. I think you could say that the Communist Party has always been skeptical of finance, viewing it as a way to enrich a few people at the expense of the working class and fomenting instability that has marred the U.S. And even though it's communist roots, China has a high wealth disparity. A lot of the policies are aimed at tackling those issues.
So if Xi wants to shift resources and attention away from the banking and tech real estate sectors, where does he want to redirect these resources to?
Beijing is dubbed the new threes, so it's EVs, batteries, and solar panels. Bloomberg Economics estimated that the proportion of GDP from these sectors will swell to 23%. The high-tech sector is also estimated to account for 19% of GDP by 2026.
As a result, in the shift to high-quality growth, many people have lost their jobs. In real estate alone, the collapse has tossed some 500,000 people out of work in the 3 years through 2023. That's according to data firm Kurian Chiku. In the internet sector, Alibaba alone shrunk their headcount by roughly 20,000 last year. And Lulu says even if you're lucky enough to keep your job, you might not be able to keep the same paycheck.
Look at CICC, one of China's largest investment banks. They cut compensation for senior bankers by more than 40%. And also the staff have been told to avoid wearing luxury goods and no more business class.
And some employees are even being asked to hand over money they were already paid.
Yeah, some people have been told to pay back their bonuses.
You basically have to give them back money that you've already earned and have probably already spent.
Yes, which is why people are selling their cars.
Oh man, that must really hurt.
Yeah.
Lulu and her team talked to more than a dozen people across the growth sectors that had been high-flying: finance, tech, and real estate. Many said they're now under mounting pressure.
Many highlighted the stress that they felt brought on by these salary cuts, escalating scrutiny of expenses, also the sting of being shamed on social media for their affluent lifestyles. One of the people that we talked to, Sharon Cao, who is an executive at a mutual fund, and she also sold her car, a Porsche, and she says that sleeping pills are her best friends these days.
All of these changes, the job cuts, pay cuts, and the clawbacks, are taking a toll on the mental health of many workers in China. That was captured in a poll of 60,000.
There was a recent poll by this consulting firm, Chen, and they found that anxiety and depression were some of the top concerns for people in China right now. Students and workers in finance and tech were the majority of clients seeking mental health support.
After the break, how will workers left behind manage as the economy moves forward? And what will the labor disruption mean for the Chinese government? China's pivot from high-speed growth to high-quality growth has potentially left millions of people unemployed in the middle of their careers. But there are promises of growth in new sectors like EVs and solar panels. So I wanted to know, will the growth of these new sectors make up for the losses in other industries of the economy?
It will create jobs, it will create growth, but it's probably not going to be jobs for this batch of people, this generation of people, because they're all in their mid-30s and 40s. They're not in STEM subjects that are needed for the high-quality growth in chip industries that are in favor right now. So this generation of people, they face the danger of being cast adrift.
And how difficult is it when white-collar workers in their 30s and 40s lose their jobs in China? Is there, as big of a stigma that comes with job loss?
The question is, how are they going to reskill? And is there enough time for them to ever find that opportunity to reskill? Because in China, their job applications sometimes just blatantly say no older than 35 years old. And for women, it's even harsher. And age discrimination is even worse because the prospective employers also question whether they want to have a second kid or third kid.
Recently, China approved a plan to gradually delay retirement, raising the retirement age for the first time since 1978, a move likely to anger workers who are already under stress.
I think that's why you're seeing so much social media backlash after China announced that they were going to increase the retirement age. And, some people joke that if you can't even hold your job till 35, how are you going to hold it out till 60?
And historically, a high unemployment rate often leads to political unrest. China's unemployment rate reached an all-time high of 30% in 1989, the same year when the Tiananmen Square protests happened and the ensuing crackdown took place. So I asked Lulu, could this new round of job loss result in political instability?
So none of the people that we interviewed in finance plan to protest. That said, the cases of dissent increased 18% in the second quarter compared with last year, and that was by a survey by China Dissent Monitor. And out of those cases, most were related to economic issues and aggrieved homeowners. That said, Patricia Kim from the John Thornton Center, she says that Xi's grip on power has not been dented by any of this.
With China's ironclad grip on security and surveillance technology, widespread demonstrations are out of the question. But some people are taking their frustrations to social media. And that's a place where you're seeing a particular phrase pop up, garbage time in history.
Which is 历史的垃圾时间. Garbage time of history describes a society where the laws of economics are violated and individuals have no power to make changes.
垃圾时间是个什么概念呢？就是你咋干都不对。
Basically saying that nothing that you do is right.
就是你投资也不行，不投资也不行。
Cannot invest, cannot spend, turn left, turn right, everything is wrong.
That sounds all really depressing.
Yeah. I think it's like a more passive-aggressive form of people trying to make sense of what's happening to them and turning all that negative energy into dark humor.
And when the best and brightest and most ambitious citizens are feeling depressed or unmotivated, the ramifications for the economy could be huge. With salary cutbacks and potential job loss on the horizon, Lulu says the sources Bloomberg spoke to are already cutting back on spending by doing things like dining out less.
You wonder, why is China consumer spending not going up? And that's the reason. I think right now we're just starting to see the effects unfold. And part of the reason the consequences or the backlash hasn't been that strong, I think, is because a lot of these people still have some household savings. And they're slowly eating through that savings right now. And we haven't gotten to a point where things are so dire they can no longer put food on their plates. And hopefully it never comes to that point and they can still find that transition to the act two in their lives.
In 2019, even before the economic downturn, the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences estimated that the urban pension fund would run dry by 2035 because not enough people are working and paying into it. Fundamentally, Lulu says what we're seeing now is a conflict of values, a clash of two generations of Chinese who hold very different worldviews.
The battle is, really pits a generation of people whose worldviews were shaped during an era of reform and opening up versus a system that's reverting to its more rigid roots under Xi and his cabinet. And these people spent their formative years during the more turbulent Cultural Revolution era. Whereas Wu, his generation, grew up in an era that, first of all, benefited from China's reform and opening up. Many of them went overseas and were educated abroad. And that concept or that idea that China would become more integrated with the US, with the rest of the world, that was the norm. And now all of a sudden, all these beliefs are up in the air. One of my contacts asked me the other day, like, who is still happy in China right now?
That's right.
And I think about it, the government officials are under a huge amount of pressure. The entrepreneurs are not motivated to invest capital right now. State-owned enterprise workers are being capped off in salary. Your white-collar workers working for foreign companies are fearful of losing their jobs. Now this shift has left an entire generation of Chinese elites and previously prestigious jobs adrift. And, the mood has gotten so grim that many feel that they're living in a garbage time of history.
And in the meantime, what's happened to Thomas Wu?
Well, Thomas Wu has managed to find a group of people who are like him, who want to avoid their wives at night, and now he has a cycling group.
Depressed and avoiding being at home?
And so now he has a cycling group.
I guess at least that's a little bit healthier than staying at home.
I would say that most of these people that we interviewed are surprisingly resilient mentally. From Wu's point, his goal is to live healthy and be mentally stable and live another 30 years so he can see his child grow up and live an era where he considers to be more in line with his worldview.
So he's really then, living out this future for his children's future.
That's right.
And I imagine hoping that somehow his children's future will be a lot brighter than his.
Question for debate.
Is he hopeful?
Question for debate.
This is the Big Take Asia from Bloomberg News. I'm Oanh Ha. This episode was produced by Yang Yang, Naomi Ng, and Jessica Beck. It was mixed by Blake Maples and fact-checked by Eddie Duan. It was edited by Caitlin Kenny, Jeffrey Grocott, and Emily Cadman. Our senior editor is Elizabeth Ponso. Nicole Beamsterboer is our executive producer, and Sage Bauman is Bloomberg's head of podcasts. Please follow and review the Big Take Asia wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps new listeners find the show. See you next time.